Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's webinar on compliance, burden or benefit. For those who have not met or not seen me before, my name is Phil Lloyd. I'm the Head of Engineering Policy for Logistics UK, and today I've got the honour of chairing today's event and also doing doing one of the sessions at the end as well for the fireside chat. So if we look at, for those who are new to this, you may not use this system before, but if you've got any technical issues, so if you can't hear anything or you're having problems, there's an email address there. If you can just email our events team, then they will try to remedy this in the background for you, you'll get the slide deck as well. That can be shared after the event, so you'll get that through a hyperlink. There's an opportunity for ask questions. My suggestion would be just ask the questions as we go, and if we get time at the end, there's a Q&A session right at the end. We'll go through those questions. Hopefully we'll be able to get through some or most of them. If there are too many, we may have to just pick and choose those. So apologise in advance if you don't get your question asked. If we can do it at a later date, we might try to resolve that. And there's some handouts as well. So if you click that little icon, then you can download the handouts. What we'll do is when we finish the webinar, we'll leave the slide up for a bit so you can click on that and download the handouts. And then there will be the opportunity to get a copy of the recording after the event as well. So you'll be sent a link, and on that you'll have the opportunity to go through the recording again if there was something that you missed and you wanted to do that. Okay, so that's the housekeeping. Our agenda for today, if we can just flick on one. So I'll just do a short scene setting for today's event. And then we'll move on to Stephen Lewis at Webfleet. Webfleet is Bridgestone's globally trusted fleet management solution, and over 50,000 businesses across the world use it to improve their fleet efficiency, support drivers, and boost safety, and to stay compliant and work more sustainably and substantially. So we'll have Stephen doing that. After them, we're going to move on to Samuel Evans at Quargo. Quargo is an intelligent transport platform purpose-built for modern logistics. With seamless integration with partners like them, Quargo brings all your systems, data, and workflow together, giving transport operations the visibility, control, and efficiency they need to grow faster and to run smarter. After Samuel, then we'll have a session with what I'll do. This we call it a fireside chat. Sounds very cozy, doesn't it? So between myself and Simon Sparrowhawk, who's the operations director at Wyvern Cargo Limited, bringing over 15 years of experience in UK logistics and freight transport. He's known for driving strategic growth through operational innovation, leveraging technology to streamline processes, enhance efficiencies, and deliver smart logistics solutions. Like I said, then we've got a Q&A session there. So if you've got any questions for Stephen, Samuel, or Simon, then please do pop them into the chat, and we'll try to get through them. Okay, thank you very much. So that's today's program. For me, I'm just going to do just a little bit on compliance. If you can just flick on, please, Jamie. Yeah. So really, this is about compliance. Is it a burden or benefit? That's sort of the question that's posed. I suppose very much depends on how you look at it. I would suggest that compliance is actually a benefit because when things go wrong, and you're brought in front of a traffic commissioner at a public inquiry, or God forbid, in front of a law, should anything have drastic gone wrong, then as that Latin quotation there is used in the court of law, just because you were ignorant of something doesn't mean you can claim that as your defence. So we hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, I wasn't aware of that," and all the rest of it. And if you're a director of an organisation, then you may well lean on your transport manager to do all those things for you. But at the end of the day, as directors, that you're also responsible for your business. What you'll also find, that the director, particularly the person who signs the operator license now, may be called to a public inquiry as well. So can have the directorship of that organisation in the remit of transport law and transport operations. So for operator licensing, they can have themselves removed from a directors list there. What I would say, actually, on that, I know a lot of transport managers, they're fully aware of the things that they need to be responsible for. That's not so our findings, part of the rest of the business. So the reason I put that OLAT course there, I would suggest that anyone who's in a position of responsibility within your business, probably not the transport manager because you do that through your transport CPC, is get them on an OLAT course. At least they'll understand then the remit that a transport manager is responsible for, and what the roles and responsibilities are for an operator license. And that way, there is no ignorance. So my suggestion to you would be, definitely get your directors and get your finance director on it, because they're the ones who might want to prevent you spending money on it all. And actually, you can have these done at your business. So why not have it done for your board? Or if you're getting a new director into your business, then maybe that's something that should be considered as being part of the induction course for your organisation, an OLAT course. I've got a number of other things down there as well. So the guide to maintain roadworthiness, that's something that tends to be overlooked quite a lot. That's been refreshed this April. So I would suggest if you haven't looked at that, you need to have a refresh about the things that's included in there. There's a couple of other documents, load security. So there's a new code of practice for the load security. Again, that's been updated recently as well. So that's something that you'd want to have a look at. And particularly for your drivers, because they're the ones that will be accountable at the side of the road. There's two other documents that put the categorization of vehicle defects and the enforcement sanctions policy. So anyone who's given advice to your driver, so the driver might find something wrong on the road, phone that through, say I've found X, Y, or Z. The person they're speaking to needs to understand them two documents, because if they're providing advice to the driver on, oh, well, that'll be all right, just go off the next 10 miles and find out through the vehicle categorization and the enforcement sanctions policy that could result in a follow-up visit, which would bring a lot of pain to your organisation from DVSA and potentially a public inquiry, but also the enforcement sanctions policy that lists what sanction will be placed against that. So that could be a fixed penalty against the driver or points on their licence. So I think it's really important that whoever's given that advice to drivers on the road, that they should know those documents. And if you're involved as a transport manager, you should be aware of those documents as well. I put the other two documents there, realistic publications that Logistics UK do. They're really guidance. So, we've got a new one that's just been released on HGV Driver's Handbook. So that's very much for the driver to help them in the remit of compliance. And then our yearbook, so it was one of them every year, so they're always up to date, which again for you as transport managers and anyone else in your business, really a very good document. Quite thick, it's sectional though, so it's not expected to be read cover to cover, but very much about updating you on the latest bits. So yeah, stay with compliance, and don't move into the Latin phases would be my suggestion. Next slide, Jamie, please. So on that one, I just thought I'd just go through about what is sort of the state of our nation, if you like. So this is called, it's DFT's Road Safety Compliance Survey. They do this every 2 years, and this is the results of the last one. So it's a couple of years old now, but it was only produced last year. But if you look at that, what you'll find, for vehicles, about just over 9% of them found with one prohibitable defect. That's where the vehicle is taken off the road. For trailers, it's slightly higher at 12.8. Yeah, so that's what our industry is looking like. If you're in earned recognition, then the prohibition rate is substantially lower. So it's 3% for vehicles and 3% for trailers. Earned recognition operators are deemed to be the ones who are most compliant. But as you can see there, even those, they can get it wrong. That's because, when you're running with mechanical things, they tend to break. Best will in the world, some drivers will overrun their 4.5 hours because of some hold up on the motorway, things like that. But I just thought I'd share them with you so you can see the sort of the state of our nation when it comes to compliance. Just as a bit of background on that as well, that has been improving year on year. So it is yet another improvement. And I do analysis on what we do and what we see year on year. So that is the survey results, but we're also seeing an improvement anyway on it. So as an industry, that's good news because we're getting better. If we just move on a slide, I just thought I'd mention about I mentioned in one of the slides there about the Guide to Maintain Roadworthiness. So that was again updated in April this year. So there's a few changes to things that you may have seen in the past. There's a new introduction in there, which from the traffic commissioners. There's a little bit of concern about the word guide in it. People think, oh, it's guide, you can choose to ignore it should you wish to do so. Well, probably at your peril, I would suggest. And that's what this new introduction is from the traffic commissioners, explaining that they see this very much as the document that you should be following in order to maintain your vehicles. And if you ever called into a public inquiry, they will use this as the document to refer to. So they will say, why haven't you done this when the Guide to Maintain Roadworthiness suggests X, Y, and Z? So that new introduction just sort of clarifies the position and the legal, if you like, the legal standard or the standard that the GTMR has in conjunction with the likes of public inquiries and what traffic commissioners expect of you. There's additional clarification and guidance on drivers' checks. They're trying to get away from this, you just do it once in the morning. So drivers are responsible for the vehicle and any trailers that they pull for the whole journey on the highway. So they should be, checking the vehicle and the trailer over periodically, particularly for things like, load movement. That tends to be one of the top failure items, or the prohibition items that we're tending to see at the side of the road. And then tends to be, other things that drivers could have picked up, probably if they've had elements of off-road or, where they've been accidentally curbing and the likes. There's a clarification on brake assessment. So from April this year, there's an expectation that there will be laden brake testing at every safety inspection. There are some exemptions to that, although they don't call them exemptions. So you may want to read up on that, and also check that with your maintenance provider, because the expectation is that you'll have laden brake tests done, not just brake tests done. And having a laden brake test may be more challenging for some types of vehicles or operations. The maintenance provision rating scheme has been mentioned in there. So there's a new scheme that we launched at the CV show this year. This is all aimed around having a rating scheme for all workshops. So to help you as transport managers or people in your business, if you're looking to procure the services of a maintenance provider, that it gives you visibility then about how well they're perceived against this rating scheme. Don't have all of them have to be up at platinum level. There are good levels in there anyway, and you'd only probably need the top level if you're running the very latest technology and probably running alternative fuels. But some of the lower levels are quite satisfactory. My question would be, if they haven't got a rating scheme, then what sorts of people are they employing and what sorts of provisions do they have there? So it's really there to help industry. And then the last one really was just some grammatical changes in the documents. There's been a change of the wording to make it flow better. So you may read this sort of the same paragraph but in a different slight order to make it easier to read. And we've included some different images in there as well. Just flick that on, Jamie. I mentioned about the maintenance provision rating scheme, so I thought I'd just elaborate a little bit on that. These are the criteria, so there's 5 of them, platinum down to qualified, and like I said, qualified, at least that's a basic level that, everyone who's employed there working on the vehicles has got to be a qualified engineer or have grandfather rights, and they have to have done an inspection course. Years ago, I used to be a vehicle examiner. When I used to do quality control checks on people, that was on out and about in industry. The bit I found is that it was those who didn't have an inspection process were the ones who actually missed defects. So you can be the best technician in the world, but if you can't see it, you can't fix it. So we expect a lowest level, engaged level, that actually the people there would have been engaged and actually done a basic inspection course, so that at least they can do an inspection on your vehicles, and then it goes higher. If you just flick on to the last one on this, and this is what we wanted to really see about, what does success look like So for people, what we're hoping that this scheme will do is it'll bring forward, more people being trained in inspection techniques. We'll have an increased numbers of technicians who are able to work on electric, hybrid, and modern vehicles. Increased CPD, so they're kept up to date with more master technicians, because we're going to need more of them than these more complex vehicles that we've got, and also a sort of supervisory management process in place with them workshops to make sure that actually you're getting the value out of that organisation that you're expecting, you're paying for, and also there's some sort of quality control elements in there. Can we just click on the next two builds, Jamie, if you could? Yeah. For places, really about what we're looking for is improved facilities. So we know some of these are fairly shocking, so that should drive up the facilities. Have better equipped facilities as well, because a lot of these modern vehicles, just things like for the OBD, the onboard diagnostic equipment, you need an interface on that, so that it's that sort of stuff that you're going to need. And also, if we can get increased authorised testing facilities, that's the MOT stations for trucks and buses. Then if we can increase the number of them, then it gives you greater opportunities. And for outcomes, we would hope to see higher levels of compliance, which we can measure through that fleet compliance survey I mentioned earlier, but also look at the MOT rates again. They are dropping, so again we would expect to see a lower fail rate on that. So really, that's sort of just a flavour on compliance, about the sort of things that we as an industry have been trying to do, and what the sort of state of the nation is. So that was it really from me. So I just really wanted to introduce our first speaker, really, which is Stephen. So Stephen, over to you.
Thanks, Phil. So yeah, just want to talk a little bit about where we are from a trailer point of view. So if you just go to the next slide, Jamie. So yeah, so I know Phil went through some stats, but just to look at what the DVSA is saying in terms of roadside inspections and prohibition rate. So from a trailer point of view, we've kind of nailed this down through the data, down to 1 in 3 trailers basically from roadside inspection are getting a prohibition. Just go to the next slide and we'll have a look at the defects and what the top six defects for trailers are. So condition of tires and brake system and components. So I guess this is where we can start to use technology in both of these areas. So from a tire point of view, we can use walk around checks, technology using on the driver's mobile phone to make sure that we're moving away from paper. So if there is anything picked up from a walk around check, it's actually picked up straight away and action is taken, and not put in a pile of paper somewhere that we eventually get to. And brake system components, I think Phil already mentioned it about changes to lead and brake tests, but also the introduction of EBPMS on trailers and how we can use that technology. And that kind of looks like it kind of links us to the data from the MOT failure rates as well. If you just go to the next slide, Jamie, where we can see that tyres is kind of taken out of the MOT data, and it really looks at the braking performance of the trailer. And that's what's being picked up of the MOT, which kind of says why we're moving from just brake testing or roller brake testing every 12 weeks to every roller brake test has to be laden, because we're seeing these MOT failures on the trailers. So what changes, again, Phil mentioned it slightly, what changes did we see in April? If you just go to the next slide, Jamie. So in April, every brake test now has to be laden, or operator can use EBPMS system on the trailer instead of a laden brake test every 12 weeks. They still have to do their laden brake test at MOT, but they don't have to do a laden brake test every 12 weeks. But we're seeing some impact in the industry in this. So if we just go to the next slide, we're seeing some impact on the testing stations or on your maintenance provider, speaking to some of our customers out there in terms of the costs of doing these brake tests are increasing dramatically in most cases, in a lot of cases more than doubling, because of the time taken to make sure the trailer is laden properly and how long it's taken to do the brake test now that a trailer has to be laden. But we're also We're also seeing just getting time on the rolling road to do these brake tests is increasing as well. So we're seeing customers having to take trailers off the road for even longer periods of time because they just can't get a space at the maintenance provider to do these brake tests as well. So really having a big impact. And from the industry point of view, we're seeing lots of customers looking at EBPMS. So what are the options for providers at the moment? Just go to the next slide. So as we said, you've got the option one, which is we now need to make sure that every the brake test we do is laden, which again is having impacts on time and booking them in and the cost of doing those brake tests. Or we can start looking at some technology from an EBPMS point of view. And you can see here just a bit of a screenshot from the Webfleet EBPMS module, just giving us not just EBPMS data, so looking at the brake performance of the trailer every single day and being able to report on that and being able to anticipate issues in braking systems before they happen, but also giving us some added benefits as well. So we can see the trailer's laden. If it's unladen, we can obviously see where it is. We can see the live odometer reading for it, which means that we can look at the usage of our trailer. Are we maximizing our trailers? But also what's our laden, unladen running? What's our percentage of laden versus unladen running? That type of information as well, which is giving extra benefits to operators, not just outside of using it for EBPMS. So I think speaking to our customers and speaking to people in the industry and speaking to customers who are potentially looking at this technology, they're seeing some real benefits from EBPMS. So if you just go to the next slide, please. And one of the main one is obviously maximizing their trailer and the performance of the trailer. So can we use this technology to look at issues in the future? Can we anticipate that we need to do something with this trailer before we have to do it? And there we can book things in and we don't have to deal with breakdowns. Saving cost, I said multiple times that speaking to our customers, speaking to test centers, the cost of doing laden brake tests is dramatically increased. I say more than double sometimes. So I've said £100 per session extra on top of what you're currently paying for a brake test, and then also improve safety and security. So if we look at some of the accident data from HGVs and particularly trailers, we see mostly caused by braking issues or brake failure. So if we can try and use some technology to mitigate some of that as well, then obviously it improves the safety of our drivers, our operators, but also the public as well. Okay, so that's just a little look at the industry from an EBPMS point of view, the impacts of it, and why some operators are looking at the technology. I'll just pass you over to Sam from Cargo.
Perfect stuff. Thank you very much there, Stephen. So Sam from Cargo, we're a transport management platform as it is. Roughly speaking, I'm just going to try and high level go over today some of the ways that we're obviously integrating kind of the likes of Webfleet and the compliance tools that they have into the TMS world of things, and how that's obviously benefiting some of the joint customers that we share today, and how that obviously streamlines some of the frustrations that we tend to see. So if we look at a kind of compliance and operations challenge perspective, for the most part, from a high level, it's obviously managing drivers' hours, vehicles records, kind of brake tests, as obviously Stephen's talking about there, and obviously MOTs, service schedules, all the things that everybody has to deal with. So ideally, what we want to be able to do is bring that information into kind of a centralized place to manage, so that everybody can see it and obviously manage it without having to have risk of kind of audit, fines, and all the rest of it that come alongside that. And then if we go to the next slide. Obviously from a focus from our perspective, so from Cargo side, what we're really interested in doing is kind of connecting the cab to the back office and vice versa. So a lot of what we focus on is trying to get the relevant data sets from the relevant different systems. Obviously, every operation runs different systems across the board. And sometimes there is ancillary bits of information that cross over, where what you really want to do is have all of it in one place in the right time, so that each of the operators and the kind of planners and everybody involved gets to make a relevant and good decision when the time comes, which is something we see more and more of as the industry kind of progresses forward and embraces technology more and more as that evolves as well. from kind of a power of Webfleet cargo integration perspective. So from our side, obviously, there's an awful lot of ways we see the kind of integration supporting the current customer base that we have, and a lot of ways that we see it kind of rolling out. Today, we're going to talk about some of the areas that we've already got in there, but also some areas that we've got coming that we're obviously in the works of kind of testing and developing as we speak now. But a lot of the ways in terms of obviously the integration is really about bringing in the data that sits within Webfleet in front of the operators so that they can stop problems before they happen. So ideally, obviously, some of the stuff that the previous speakers, Phil and Stephen, were discussing there, where you might want to avoid issues or you want to obviously better optimize for making sure that these things don't happen or you don't catch them too late. The way you do that is obviously getting them in front of the relevant people at the right points in time. So some of the bits we'll look at, obviously, from a next slide perspective, will be kind of the real-time compliance side of things, which will start to bring in, some of the new features that we're bringing out. If we go, there we are. So from real-time kind of compliance. So a big one, and this is the feature we're working on, probably most in the spotlight right now, is bringing in the driver's hours into the kind of transport management world as well. So rather than just having a driver's hours sat within the kind of compliance tooling within the business, you want that sat in front of the planners, the people that are actually putting the vehicles on the road and getting them kind of routed out for the day or for the period of time that they're out there for. So a lot of the focus from us right now is how can we get that in there, but also how can we get more data in front of the planners without overloading them, which is the fine balance that we have to run. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're automatically given some warnings if there are some issues in terms of driver's hours or breaks that haven't been taken, or if they're falling outside of kind of compliant windows. So again, we're stopping that stuff coming before it happens, but we're also enabling the planners to be able to better inform customers when these things are starting to come up. So if we go to the next slide, there'll be a screenshot which you guys will be able to see. So in here, obviously we've got the screenshot shown on the right there, which is a test environment where you can see the kind of initial run for the driver's hours, where we'll actually see, and this is where it gets really exciting from a kind of transport management system into the compliance world side of things. What you want is to be able to see as a planner and an operator, where is my vehicle, where is my driver, what is the route that they're currently undertaking. So obviously we're bringing in the status and the telematics information to show you where the vehicle is. We're showing you what jobs they're actually associated along. So no more two screens in the office, one with Webfleet, one with your TMS, having to try and kind of reconcile the two dots on maps and figure out what's going on. Instead, you've actually got it all set in one place now. You'll be able to see where the vehicles are in lifetime. You'll see the route that they're actually allocated to. And then this new iteration we're bringing out, you'll actually be able to see the driver's hours remaining on that specific driver for the period and when their break is coming up. So you'll understand, okay, I know they've been on the road for the past 3 hours. In an hour and 20, we're due to have a break. And you'll be able to see how that actually impacts the journey that they're on. And also, if you're thinking about, more tramper drivers, when you should be, perhaps having them rest and not putting them on a long journey, perhaps across the country and back up. Then obviously vehicle compliance maintenance side of things. So when it does come to things like your service schedules, your maintenance, repairs, anything else in that regard, you still want that to be shown. Obviously, I've worked in a traffic office myself personally, and how many times I've routed a trailer up the country that should have been at the depot, I do not know. And it's something that we hear quite often and a lot across the customer base, where they'll actually say, obviously the compliance team know exactly what needs to happen, where the vehicle needs to be and what needs to kind of be done to it. They'll inform the operations team, and obviously then they don't get visibility of it on the day, and suddenly they've planned the vehicle in. So from our side, we bring that data in, we make sure that we're collecting the relevant information against the vehicles, and that we're actually blocking them across that period of time so that it's not able to then obviously be planned onto, but also that we flag it ahead of time. Because what you really want to know is actually if I do have a vehicle in a kind of different area within the country and I need to get it back for a service, for some maintenance, for some repairs, I need to make sure that that is very clear from the planners that it's coming up, so they don't plan it into any other long journeys, but also that it's blocked out on the period that it needs to be done so that we can manage that. And all of the documentation and relevant information sits then against the job in not only your compliance tool, but also within your transport management system, so that the two are speaking very nicely together and you're not having different departments with differing information. And if we move forward one more. Which is then to exception management. So what you ideally want to do is you want your teams, and the goal from I think both Cargo and Webfleet on this is to have customers that are proactive instead of reactive. What you don't ever want to be doing is kind of just having problems hit you and then deal with them afterwards. Ideally, between all of the information that the kind of Webfleet team have and we have are able to put together in the system, you should be able to make proactive decisions and be able to plan for when things go wrong, as opposed to kind of just reacting as it happens. So from our perspective, it's all about giving you that very quick and easy to digest bit of information to say, this is what's going on the road, this is where the journey is, here are the knock-on impacts of that, so that you guys can actively then obviously work to fix that, whether that is a breakdown on the road, a repair that needs to happen, whether it's driver's hours infringements, things like that might come up. Ideally, you want them right there and then in the most obvious way possible, and with a very clear way to action them and fix them before they become too much of a problem. And then a final one from me before I pass back over to Phil. So kind of how live telematics and compliance features help to transport kind of fleet operations as they are. From our perspective, obviously, we've put on a few of the headline bits that we see as initial kind of low-hanging fruit, I suppose, that we see benefits of the kind of integration and the connection. I think the world from a transport operations and technology perspective as a landscape is becoming more and more integrated, which is fantastic. That's what we want to see, and that's definitely the way forward with things. Ideally, what you want, which is what we alluded to at the start, is all of the relevant information from all of your company's systems feeding into the place and being put in front of the right person at the right time. Now, one of the challenges with that as we continue to scale this out and bring more integrations in, and complex operations get more and more complex and more compliance rules come in, is how do we get the right information there? There's a lot of data around. So the key for us and for the partnership going forward from a cargo and web fleet perspective is getting the right information in front of the right people so that they can make smarter decisions, but that they can make them faster. That's really the goal for all of this. And ultimately, like we said before, making them proactively instead of reactively. And with that, I'll pass over to Phil.
Thanks, Samuel. That's fine. That was great. So we've heard both from Steve and Samuel there. Obviously the system providers, but I think it's like a lot of things, isn't it? That what you actually need sometimes is the voice of the person who's been the recipient of those. So I think it would be great, wouldn't it, if we was to get the take of an operator. Hence, we've got Simon there that'll be doing that with us. So we're having this as like we called it a fireside chat, Simon. So I'm sure we won't be too tasking for you. So really, we're interested in getting your perspective, because you've been the recipient of these, and obviously you go into these with this sort of an expectation, haven't you? So I think what would be really good in this is for you to tell us a little bit about your experience. So I've got a few questions, Simon. The first one really is about what were the key factors that influenced your decision to invest in a trailer monitoring solution rather than accepting the increased traditional brake testing costs?
Sure. To be honest, the main thing was cost. We spoke to our existing provider about the laden brake test, roller brake test costing, and what it was going to be looking like, and the potential downtime of it. And we married that against the cost of the eBPMS solution from Webfleet, and we worked out that depending on exactly how many trailers we got in the fleet at any one time, for every 100 trailers, so to speak, it was about £25,000 per year less by being able to track the trailers and monitor their brake performance, as opposed to just going with a laden brake test down the supplier. So that actually is slightly different. Has actually ended up being slightly different, the cost for the brake test, as we're still getting, because we're still in the installation phase of the last sort of 10-15% of the trailers, is actually higher than they originally estimated as well. And we are seeing that increased downtime of waiting for it to be available.
I think I find as well that, I mean, I'm quite an advocate of electronic brake performance monitoring anyway, so probably a little bit biased on this. But the thing that I think with that is, because it's continuously monitoring, you have a brake test done, don't you? So if it's on trailers, 12 weeks, you have it done. Actually, you just wait 12 weeks then till the next thing. Whereas with this system, it's constantly looking at stuff. So we know brake chambers blow. Yeah, we know things happen. And I think, to me, that's the benefit of this, is that actually can identify problems rather than you technically running with a, maybe a defect on a trailer that's hidden away from the driver because they can't see that. They can only
Yeah,
report what they can see, aren't they? So yeah,
exactly.
I'm an advocate. And just those figures, that was, did you say 11,000? Was it?
In terms of
Did
the
you say?
amount, was
Yeah,
the for 100 trailers that we've sort of
for
estimated
100.
it off was
Yeah,
£25,000 in a year, basically,
yeah, yeah,
was the theory, and that enabled us for the first time ever to actually track the trailer. So the benefits Stephen was talking about earlier of being able to see the trailer, monitor its usage, which we've been
yeah,
blind to for, well, this is our 50th year at the minute, so we've been blind to that for 50 years. As
yeah,
we can now do that at the same time. So it had some added benefits, and then the saving on the increased cost was an extra bonus.
yeah. One of the other benefits I've heard from a couple of operators as well is that, particularly when it's not the same trailer tractor combination, is that they've
Yeah.
identified problems with some of the tractor units, because actually
Uh,
it's been recording a drop off, and they found out it was only when it was connected to one particular tractor unit.
oh
So
yeah.
actually, it was the air pressure coming down the line off the tractor unit that was a problem.
Right.
You get added benefits. You can pick up problems on your
Exactly. Yeah.
tractor units as well. Everyone's winning. Yeah.
Everyone loves
Uh,
the problem. It's fine. Yeah.
yeah, and I prefer a solution. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I tell the kids anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So on systems itself. So how do you think the integration of Webfleet and Cargo has streamlined the operations for your planning and fleet teams then? And what considerations operators should keep in mind then if they're considering, having a similar sort of system inputted?
Sure. So obviously we changed TMS to Cargo sort of back end of last year, and at the same time as that, our existing provider of telematics was the same provider as our TMS. So we had to change that at the same time.
Yeah.
We spoke to the guys at Cargo. They recommended a few that they were in partnership with for the data integration. So we thought, well, we want to get a central point that syncs all the data back to and from. And the benefits were pretty much instant. Once the trackers started to install, the planning team now, they can, in their planning screen, so they're dragging jobs, collections, deliveries all around the screen all day. They can now see all the tractor units, all the rigids, and all the trailers on the map if they want to at the same time. So they'll go, okay, yeah, where's this driver? They can just they can either search for them or they can find their load on the screen. It shows them where they are, then shows them how they're getting on their day. Are they ahead? Are they behind? Which jobs have they completed? Which haven't they? So for that, in terms of live progress updates and visibility to the transport planners, to them it's a different world because they're in one screen, not two, because they always had to have two different screens open. So now they love that, and the benefits, as Sam was saying, that are potentially coming down the line in the hopefully fairly near future will only enhance that, because they will then start to get to a stage where they don't really need to worry about visiting Webfleet at all from a planning perspective, because they can do that all within Cargo. They can see what time the driver's got left. That's the bit at the moment that they can't do. But when you flip that the other way, the fleet management team then don't need to know how to use Cargo. They don't like to use TMSs. They don't know how to use them most of the time, but they know how to use telematics systems. So depending on your job role, you learn one or the other, etc. And yeah, the main thing that we've decided going forward, and as part of this decision, was that anyone we work with and any suppliers we work with, we need to be able to integrate their data, effectively get it back to Cargo as the TMS, because that's where the transport planning happens. That's where the bit that makes the big difference happens. So if we can get all that compliance information, resource information back into there to aid the planners to make us more compliant over time, then that can only be an improvement, and that's our goal, and that's our big recommendation now is if you can integrate it, then do it.
Do so, yeah. Was it, when you were talking about implementing this, was there any resistance or concerns of doing this? Like from the drivers, it's worse than a tackle. They're checking me all the time now. If so, how did you get over that?
Yeah, drivers weren't too bad. There were bits coming down the line which they're a bit there will be a bit more pushback on in sort of the future developments and stuff. But to be fair, they've got quite used to it. They quite like the fact that we're able to see things, and there are times we know things before they do. So a trailer can be doing its brake test, for example, as it's testing each day. They aren't aware of the problem. We can then tell them, right, it's got to close to the threshold. Please be careful. We're going to route you back to the depot as quickly as possible. We need to get it checked out, looked into, etc. So they actually like generally that we're more compliant. The biggest issue was convincing the finance director to spend the money on it. In truth, so that was our biggest issue. But then once we could quantify the saving upon the extra we would be paying anyway as of April, then it became a situation where he was happy for us to go ahead and things like that.
Well, talking of finance and finance directors, how do you measure and track then the return on the investment from your trailer monitoring technology beyond the direct cost savings itself? So there's cost savings, I'm sure, but have been able to do that.
It's still a little bit in its infancy with that part, to be honest, only because we're still completing the installation, so we haven't got a full fleet that are on the solution at this point. But I think we're down to about last 10-15%, so we're pretty much there. We now know that the brake test cost is going to be more than we were told. So we were told about 120, 130 quid, and it's going to be it is proving to be about 160 to 180. And we're taking a little longer, obviously. We've got to take the trailer down there, whereas we don't have to. The bit we're really interested to start working out, and we're just trying to piece together how this actually works, is to calculate that downtime reduction. So how many more times, how much more time is the trailer on the road for? Is it available to the planning guys? Is it available to a customer? And then, in truth, can we reduce the number of trailers we have and operate and maintain and monitor going forward? Because if we're not using those trailers often enough, if we've got multiple parked up every day, well, we don't need multiple if they're parked up every day. That's just wasted spare capacity. So far a little tricky for us to monitor it properly, but in terms of even just the basic brake test costing, then it's hundreds of pounds per trailer per year.
And potential asset utilization as well.
Exactly.
Sometimes, like you said, it can be sometimes difficult to cost out, can't it?
Exactly. But potentially it might be that if we got rid of 2 trailers, that's 80 to 100,000 pounds worth of capital saving in the future. So
absolutely, and things are only getting tougher, aren't they?
Exactly.
And sort of on that, then, because our industry, we're still facing, aren't we? Increased compliance requirements, and therefore for the cost of that. So, what advice would you give then to other fleet operators who are evaluating technological solutions, then to sort of address them challenges a bit like you've done?
The main one would just be, use the technology, leverage it to your benefit. It's been a really tricky thing for us to try and get across to everybody that's worked here. I mean, the company is 50 years old. We've got people who've been here for 35 and 40 years of that. And it's, we do it this way, we do it that way. But use the technology to its benefit and exploit the capabilities and the options that it has is the biggest one. We're trying now to monitor that wasted resource. So what aren't we using? What trucks aren't doing the mileage that they could be doing? What trailers aren't doing the mileage that we would want on a daily basis? How does that look going forward? What differences can that make? And then, we've obviously had significant benefits from our web fleet, the BPMS experience. Itself, obviously, we've been able to track the trailers. We've had warnings for overloads. So if our night loading team are loading trunks for a pallet network and they're using LSTs, obviously the LST can take less weight than the standard double decker that they would normally use, and we're then getting an alert that they've gone over over the capacity, over the weight capacity of the axles, and we go, right, we need to go and look at that, take a few pallets off, switch a few pallets between trailers, and make it more compliant. And we've managed to sort of reduce that number quite significantly. when we
Mm.
started in this, we had every few days we'd get an alert because they were ramming the first trailer full of as much stuff as they could get off the floor. And we had to go out and say, no, you've got 3 here, spread it,
Yeah.
because all the heavy stuff comes back first. So you need to
Yeah.
have the light stuff available later. So we've been able to make a change to their mentality, and we've pretty much seen that eradicated by dealing actually with the warehouse staff who never see this
Mm.
data. We just
Yeah.
can use it to ourselves, and and that's really it's just a case of using that tech, and the more it improves, because it's all still fairly young, particularly with the links between systems, and just waiting for that to continually improve and enhance and use it to our advantage to be more compliant, but be more compliant easier rather than
Yeah.
making it harder.
Yeah.
Trick.
I suppose really it's just exploiting those opportunities that their technology brings, doesn't it? And it is one of them. You tend to, I find with technology, it's brought in for a particular solution, but then you realise the other things that can spring from it, doesn't it? But I think, like you said, you've got to have a little bit of bandwidth, either yourself or within your team, to look at that and think, you know what, we've now got the opportunity to do that. Why don't we try? So it's having that little bit of time to think, oh, actually, we can use this. So they're, I suppose, like added benefits, aren't they, from a system that you didn't really anticipate?
And then it's using the new bits that come out. So the guys at Webfleet and at Cargo will send us updates on here's a new feature, here's a new feature, here's a new feature, and making sure we actually investigate it and use it, because otherwise, if we don't, in 5 and 10 years' time, we'll just be using what we got 5 and 10 years ago, rather than a new and improved systems that they are becoming as they go along. So that's my predominant task, is to keep on top of that and make sure we are using the changes that happen to our benefit.
Good, yeah. So then, looking ahead, then you're sort of doing that, aren't you? It's like peeling an orange. It's like another layer underneath. Then, what other areas of your fleet operations do you see having the potential for similar technological-driven efficiencies and improvements? Then,
again, a little bit like what Stephen was saying with the sort of things that can be monitored through Webfleet. So one we haven't done yet is tire pressure, and using the monitoring system for that. That's one that at the minute it's hard to cost out how much that would save us across a period of time, but that's something that I think will probably become something we'll just end up having to do. It'll become a necessity rather than a desirable that it is at the moment. Obviously, with vehicle checks and defect reporting, there are apps and there are bits of kit in place for that, but those becoming more intelligent and more integrated, so that if there's a problem with a truck, we get that information back to TMS, and then the planners can see that, there's a problem with this truck. Even if the driver thinks, it's okay, I can carry on, they can then step in and stop that happening. And you've got a problem with the backlights or whatever, therefore we need to get that fixed before you leave. Then they can refuse to release them, give the paperwork, etc. Now, I think the big ones really are the driver performance and coaching elements, in truth. So, and which all leads into that sustainability issue that's a huge part of the problem in the industry anyway. So what do certain drivers do well, and what do they do badly? How can we coach them and improve them and incentivize them to do things better? They're pallet network, night trunk drivers, using their cruise control, constant speed processes, etc. Which a local driver can't do that because he's stop-start all day and he's changing speeds. But if you're up and down the motorways, you should be able to do it. So using the tech which is within Webfleet to build a scorecard and go, what do certain drivers do well? What do certain departments do well, etc. And then the big one for me, which I think is going to be the awkward one with our driving staff, is using the driver monitoring of sort of actually what is the driver doing. So the sort of AI internal camera scenario. We're starting to go down that road and look into it. Again, speaking to the guys at Webfleet about that, Stephen and the team, to have that monitoring of what actually is going on. Is someone drifting off? Are they driving too long? If they're in their 10th hour, do they need to be in their 10th hour? And are we getting more alerts of the fact they're in their 10th hour every day or 15th hour working hour, etc.? So to be able to do that, and again, make us safer, make our trucks safe, make our drivers safer, and make those they contact safer as a result.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'll stop there on that safety bit. Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think to finish on as well, isn't it? You know, we've got about the driver safety. So a lot of people see these things as threats, don't they? As opposed to looking after themselves, and it's only sort of with hindsight when they think, well, maybe I was a little bit tired, and maybe I could have avoided that incident or accident or that near miss. That
Yeah,
a lot of people don't report near misses, do they? Because it always feels like a criticism. But it's
exactly.
really about understanding that, because that near miss was a potential accident, wasn't it? So
Yeah, in
yeah,
another day that could be a problem. So
yeah.
always best
So
avoided.
that's great. So, and I think what was nice for me that as well about picking out from what you said there is the fact that you're using it for other things and seeing the potential of it, whereas analog doesn't give you that, does it? But digital can. Yeah. So thank you
Exactly.
for that.
Exactly. No problem
Yeah.
at all. Thanks, Phil.
All right. Well, we'll open up for any questions and that people got. Simon, thank you for that. We do have a couple in there, so any others, please pop them in, and then and we'll deal with them as we go along. There was a question back, I think it was on my session, about the MPRS. Does it look at the inspection reports and the compliance with GTMR? The answer to that one, it doesn't know, because it's just a maintenance rating scheme. So it's mating the provisions there. So it's focused on two elements: one on the people, about the competence and capabilities, and the other one about the provision of the systems itself. We are looking in the MPRS steering group at KPIs. So what would they be? Everyone says, "Oh, MOT failure rates," but that can be fudged, because we used to have something that was called the Prepare ID that used to register that, but it was a bit flawed. Well, what we just agreed at last week's steering group is that we aim to bring in new KPIs hopefully next year. But what we want to do is we want to work with the workshops themselves to come up with a series of KPIs that are meaningful and actually can be reported and validated. There's no point in putting the stuff in there that can be fudged. So it will do in the fullness of time, but not yet. There was a question there that hope Stephen, and maybe you could switch your camera on, and
Yeah,
if you're not
here
run
I am,
away.
still here. No,
Yeah,
no,
so
still here.
yeah, which about the GTMR. So the question was, GTMR does not say latent brake testing at 12 weeks. It says every PMI. We are on
Yeah,
6-week intervals. It really needs clarifying for those who may not understand.
yeah. So I guess 12 weeks is the maximum period, right? Uh, so it does depend how often you're doing your PMI. So, and that's
Yeah.
what and that's what
Uh,
operators are having to do, right? It just depends their policy in relation to when they're doing their PMI and how often they're doing their brake tests.
yeah.
So if you are doing them more regularly than every 12 weeks, then obviously the cost benefit is even greater.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you've got
Yeah,
electronic brake performance monitoring, you're monitoring all the time, aren't you? So it's so it's
yeah,
every time it's used.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
your PMI now just is a visual inspection, right? But when you go to
Uh,
EBPMS, we're doing the brake performance every single day. So every 24 hours, the operator gets a new score based on the previous 24-hour period in terms of how efficient the brakes are performing. And as Simon says, we can see these sudden drop-offs in performance. We can see them for the previous day. We can take some actions before we get to a fail. So it's not a case of it's failed, we need to bring it in. It's we've seen a drop, we need to get this trailer in. We need to see what's wrong before we get a fail.
uh, and just another one where I've got you, Stephen, as well. Is that what do you
Yeah.
see? And the question is, what do you see in the market in terms of electronic brake performance monitoring take up?
I think we're seeing kind of two waves, to be honest. The first wave was probably the back end of last year and the beginning of this year, where people were looking at the technology and how the changes in April would impact their business, mainly
Yeah,
from a cost point of view, because they were anticipating with their suppliers in terms of, as again Simon did, and how much the laden brake tests were going to cost going forward,
yeah,
and seeing if they could do things a little bit more efficiently. And now it's starting to happen. We're getting that second wave where people are saying, okay, actually, it's costing us more than we thought. And also the downtime is massive. So where we were having trailers off the road for maybe a couple of hours previously, and we can get them back, they're off for a day to 3 days now because we're
Yeah.
having to wait for capacity in the rolling road, and the tests are taking a lot longer. So, and that's even happening with people that have their own workshops with their own rolling roads. They're seeing it take longer because of how long it takes to do these tests. So even those guys are now looking at this kind of technology and saying, can we keep the trailers out on the road?
So, on your experience then, so some potential customers who didn't take up the offer. What was the
Yeah,
reasons why they chose not to take up EPBMS? Doesn't roll off the tongue
I
that either,
think
does it? EPBMS.
no,
Yeah,
it doesn't.
we need
But
to look after it.
I,
Yeah,
I think they're the ones that are in the second wave originally who were like, I don't think the impact on our business is going to be as big as it ended up being, if you know what I
yeah,
mean. So
yeah,
they were, okay, it might cost us a little bit more, it might take a little bit longer, but the cost of that doesn't outweigh the cost of the technology.
yeah,
And now we're seeing actually the cost of doing this is a lot more than the cost of the
yeah,
technology. And also the technology can do a lot more for us than just EBPMS.
yeah.
So
Like the
they're
things
kind of
that
revisiting it
Simon
now.
just mentioned, didn't they, in his bit as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
All right.
they're kind of looking at it, but I think it's those customers that didn't really think it would have an impact, or those people in the industry that didn't think it had an impact, and actually
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, yeah. That I'm picking up with demand's still there, and sometimes it's
Absolutely.
outstripping capacity at the minute. So I know one operator they're fitting hundreds a week. Yeah, it's still running behind. Got a couple
Oh
of questions
yeah,
for
I think everybody's running behind. But
yeah, a couple of questions for Samuel. Is around yeah. Are we going to get you put your camera back on? He's not done a
I'm
run
here.
on me, has it? No, no, no. There,
I'm
yeah.
here.
Yeah. On your what do you think? What role does data visibility play in improving compliance, and how does integration enhance that?
Yeah, I think, well, it's a little bit with some of the slides that we saw on there. You've got a lot of data coming from an awful lot of different places at the second, and
Yeah,
so being able to get that data centralized and in front of the right people at the right times is kind of the core of it, right? So it's no good knowing that, or your compliance manager knowing something is up or something might be wrong with a specific vehicle, or the driving hours might look like they're about to be infringed if the planners aren't aware of it, without them having to then have to chase the planners, tell the planners, do everything else. So if we can
yeah,
bring it all together, we just speed it up and we stop stuff getting missed, because it means that
yeah.
everybody's got no excuse to miss it.
What because for the planners to be able to use is that a big task to train them and make them competent in that, or have you found that tends to be fairly easy to do?
Yeah, from a compliance perspective, it's fairly straightforward. Obviously, the core platform itself has a lot more going on to it than just purely the compliance aspects that come through to it. But
Yeah,
like I said earlier, the hardest part about all of it isn't getting the data. There's data everywhere. Obviously, everyone's got a lot of systems now, and they're calculating and measuring an awful lot of things. It's
yeah,
making a very strong decision as to what information is shown and how we show it. So I think, thankfully, the team behind us do an incredibly good job of visualizing that stuff, so that, yeah, even if you didn't know what you were doing or looking for, you'd very clearly be able to look at it and go, I know exactly what is happening here and effectively what I need to pay attention to.
yeah. Okay, I'm just conscious of time. I realised that I didn't think we'd take this long. So, so just quickly, Samuel, thank you for yours. Steve, thank you
Thank
for for your input, and Simon, thank you for your patience with my potentially stupid questions. So, thank you all for that. Just on, if you could just flick it on one, we got our transport manager events at Logistics UK. I said earlier, I would encourage you, well, obviously you to come along that, but the people I think as well we need in that room are the directors. The people, like, you had Simon say about the finance director. Get some of your directors into that room and get them to understand what it is that's responsible for. So hyperlinks there, they're all over the country over the next few months, so that's something to think about. And then just last before I leave, and thank you for your attention. Remember I said about the handouts. Yeah, so on your screen there, There's that little icon. If you click on that, you can download the handouts. And as I said earlier, you can get a copy of the recording and a copy of the slides. There'll be a hyperlink sent out. So I hope you found that useful today. Thank you for your time. And hopefully we'll see you and ideally a director along to the Transport Manager events. So thank you for your time.